So we're going to do something formal because our photographers requested us just to have a group photograph, but I think we'll wait for Mike to come and do it at the end, if you don't mind, sir. So good morning, everybody. Gives me great pleasure to be here moderating this session on urbanization in China and India. My name is Shekhar, Shah. I am the CEO, Director General of one of India's think tanks. It's actually its oldest and its largest think tank, the National Council of Applied Economic Research. And I'm very privileged to be here, and I wanted to thank Victor and Andrew and Shah and others for inviting me to be here. I have a very distinguished panel and hopefully rich fare that we will hear from them and be able to talk to them about on the process of urbanization in China and India. I'm going to introduce the panelists in a minute, but I just wanted to make the point that much as in the morning, in this same session theme, we talked about bigger and broader issues. I think this is an opportunity for us to engage on sector issues. And even though the focus is urbanization, so much comes together: governance, public finance, local government, corruption, demographic transition. All of these things can come together under the rubric of urbanization. So I'm looking to a very rich and exciting set of discussions over the next 75 minutes. What we'll do is have 5-minute introductory statements from each of the distinguished panelists, and then I'm going to try and involve more of the audience so that we really have a dialogue going between all of you and my panelists here. So let me just start by introducing the panelists. First, Dr. Ahluwalia, who is Chairperson of ICRIER, also one of India's prominent think tanks, the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. She's also a member of the Government of India's National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council. She was a chair of India's high-powered Committee on Urban Infrastructure, the most recent such committee that has given a definitive report on what's required to grow India's urban cities. I'd also just like to add a footnote that she's a member of my board as well. So this is all interlocking boards here. I'm also very pleased to have Professor Hai Wen, Vice President of Peking University, Chancellor of the Shenzhen Graduate School, and Dean of the HSBC School of Business at Peking University. Professor Paul Romer, Professor of Economics at New York University Stern School of Business, founder and president of Charter Cities, which is a nonprofit research organization focused very much on the interplay of rules, cities, and development. He's taught at Stanford, Berkeley, Chicago, Rochester. Very pleased to have Shao Gang, who is, of course, the Director of Research at Fung Global, Special Advisor on Strategic Development for Columbia's Global Center on East Asia, Honorary Professor at the University of Hong Kong, and an Independent Director of HSBC Bank. Mike Spence hardly needs an introduction. He's not here in any case, but of course, Nobel laureate, and interestingly enough, an exact parallel to Paul Romer. Both, of course, were at Stanford, now both at the Stern School. So obviously somebody's been thinking of these parallels in putting this panel together. With that, let me just kick things off and just say that, you know, looking at urbanization is truly a wonderful lens to have in thinking about India and China. And I think there are at least 3 or 4 things that strike one immediately. First, the scale and speed of change. The kind of transformation that is about to happen in India has not happened anywhere else except in China. So there's just a great deal of parallelism, even if there is a gap of time. And what is going to happen in India and China both is going to be unparalleled anywhere else in the world, in the history of the world, in terms of the urban transformation of the two countries. Just to give you one statistic, India today has something in the order of 42 cities of a population of 1 million. It's going to have 68 cities in about 20 years. Europe today has only 35 cities of that size. When you think about the speed of transformation, an increase of 230 million took about 40 years in India, from the early 70s to the end of the 2000s, 2010. The next 250 million will happen in half that time. So that it's really a dramatic transformation that we'll see. So first, I think, is the scale and speed. Second is the opportunity, commercial opportunities, but also opportunities for inclusive growth. In India, for example, 75% of the urban population currently lives in the bottom 2 or 3 deciles of the income distribution. So that urbanization is not about elitist growth. It's very much about inclusive growth, certainly in India, which has a huge poverty problem to address. I think the third thing which I hope the panel will address is the reality of how cities are being managed and what are the things that are going right. How has China planned well in advance for urban growth? How is India going to play catch up with the huge deficit that it currently faces in its urban infrastructure? And finally, and very importantly, sustainability. How are we going to sustain this urban future in both sets of cities? So those at least are some of the things that are on my mind, but I hope the panel will have a lot to say on all of this. Mike, welcome. You've kept your seat warm. I've introduced you already, so I think we are set to go. Isha, and I'll try and cut you down if you go on beyond 5 minutes, so please try and limit yourself to 5. Everybody, thanks.
Is that the mic?
That is the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me stand up, because I like to see people when I talk. Shekhar already gave you a sense of the scale of urbanization, although it's slightly outdated. So let me tell you, we actually have 53 cities today with population of 1 million and above, and this is going to increase to 87 by 2030-31. We have a population in urban areas of 377 million, which is going to increase to 600 million by 2030-31. The urban share of GDP in India today is estimated at about 65%. This is going to increase to 75% by 2030-31. Now, we are growing, as I mentioned yesterday, at, if you look at our per capita income, it's growing at the rate of 6.5% per annum, which means that in the years to come, even if we don't accelerate and grow at about 8% GDP growth and 6.5% is the per capita income growth, we are really talking about cities being the engines of growth. So there's no question about that we have to make our cities places where investors will invest, where people can live. So we have to look at the state of public service delivery in these cities. We have to look for urban planning, urban transport, connectivity, not just within the city, but between cities and between cities and rural areas, if we are going to accommodate the process that this growth is going to unleash all across India. So there are really two kinds of issues. One is, what is the urban infrastructure investment deficit? How will the financing be found to meet this deficit? And finally, how do we create out of these assets which we put together service delivery, which is the ultimate test of functioning cities? So government had set up a committee, and I had the privilege to chair this committee, and we submitted the report last year. And we estimated that if you look for very basic urban services, of water, sanitation, urban transports, stormwater drains, street lights, these kinds of 8 sectors that were assigned to us. And we did some detailed arithmetic looking at the projects on the ground. And if you scale it up then, you find that you need $800 billion of investment over a 20-year period, beginning in 2012, going up to 2031, if you want to bridge the urban infrastructure investment deficit to take care of the gaps, not just for existing population, but the additional population that will come on board. Having got there, then the question is, how will you finance this investment? And very often we found that the discussion goes towards public-private partnership, about improving the capital market so you can have municipal bonds, they can borrow and invest. And looking at the details of the balance sheets of local governments which have the responsibility for doing this, we came to the conclusion that PPP or capital market can only help if there is a revenue model with the local government. And what is this revenue model? Because you could invest $800 billion, but if you cannot even maintain those assets, then 10 years later you'll set up another committee which will give you another estimate of infrastructure investment deficit. So from investment we went to finance, and from finance the logical route was to go to governance. Because if you want a revenue model, then you want some governance patterns. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, we had a constitutional amendment in 1992 which devolved the responsibility for a whole lot of identifiable urban public service delivery to the 3rd tier of government. So local governments are responsible for water, urban roads, sanitation, blah, blah. This mandate actually has remained unfunded because the devolution of funds that needed to go with this has not happened. And that's because the constitutional amendment was ambiguous about it. They said that states will set up state finance commissions, which will tell how the state's resources can be transferred a little bit to the local governments, so they will have the funding to do so. In fact, the situation is such that if you are a municipal commissioner or a mayor of a city, your revenue sources could be eroded overnight because there is a state election and the state government has decided that all properties below 100,000 will pay no property tax. So it's in that sort of situation of unpredictable revenues, how can you expect these local governments to plan their budgets and invest? That was one set of questions. And then the other point is that even though certain activities are left to the local governments to perform, there are other larger roles of metropolitan development. As I said earlier on, we're connecting cities to each other, connecting cities to rural areas, doing a transit-oriented planning, not just for a city, but for the country which is going through a major structural transformation, connecting spatial planning with socio-economic planning, which we really have been remiss in doing. So in that sort of context, I recommend anyone interested in issues of urbanization in India to look at our report. It is available at the ICRIER website. So I won't go into those details, except to just mention one other fact, that 7 years ago, for the first time, the government of India had a mission called National Urban Renewal Mission, in which the government of India decided that they had to proactively nudge the state governments to do X, Y, and Z in order to achieve some of these things that I have talked about earlier on, in which the government of India would give, say, 50% of the funding, the state government will give another 35%, and the 15% will come from the local government. And the assessment of this mission, which has just been extended by 2 more years, it was supposed to end in 2012, has been One, that it has certainly energized the urban development area, where there was nothing happening earlier on because there were no finances and there was no activity. But more important, a few states which had capacity at the local government level and a few states that provided an enabling environment for local governments to function were able to really accomplish major transformations in a very short period. But by and large, for most states, JNNURM, this Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, it's quite a tongue twister, was actually really a drop in a large ocean of problems and challenges for the urban sector. And today we have a situation in which we need to create agglomeration economies, but what we are seeing are congestion diseconomies. How do we create cities which can attract investment, which can provide the sort of social and physical infrastructure and service delivery that you expect of a country which is aspiring for 8% growth, even more so a country which has half its population which is below 25, and this population is connected with the world through our own developments in technology and IT and telecommunications sector. So aspirations are rising, response is beginning, but it really needs to be speeded up if we need to, if we want to achieve even sustain the 8% growth. In fact, our report comes to the conclusion that unless we get our urban strategy right, we can't get 8% growth. And I would just like to end with one other point which is really extremely important when we look at the urban area, is that the environmental implications of urban development will be extremely significant for us. So the more we put out our rules, for example, on solid waste management and disposal, the earlier we get down to enforcing these rules, the easier would it be for us to have 8% growth. And we've been talking a lot about how Asia has to find solutions which may be Asia specific. I would just like to encourage you to go to a Indian Express website, or if you can Google my name, you will find that I've written about 30 columns. It's a monthly column on urban transformations in India. The latest, which was written day before yesterday and appeared yesterday, was about a community which is encouraging its people to segregate waste by source at home, and then taking it, recycling it, and in the end it's only 20% of the waste that needs to be disposed of. And as we grow and as we want to live more like the industrialized world, the plastics in our garbage, the other such inert material in our solid waste is really increasing. So unless we find novel ways of really reducing that burden for ourselves, as we will be increasing our growth rate, we will find that we will be creating this additional burden of disposing of waste, which really doesn't need, it has better ways of being composted, being putting into eco-bricks. And to me, it was amazing to see that in this small town of 75,000, 20 kilometers outside of Chennai, there was this realization that we could do all of this. Now, these are the kinds of examples which, when you see and you write about, I find a lot of small towns and other cities kind of come up with what they are trying to do, and we need to do that at the same time as we aspire for an 8% sustained growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhar. So really grassroots innovation with a policy framework to match. And the amazing fact somebody shared with me was that when you look at India in 2030, about 60 to 70% of that is yet to be built. So immense commercial opportunity, immense opportunity to leapfrog on sustainability, GHG emissions, a whole range of areas. With that, let me turn to Professor Hai Wen for his introductory statement on China.
So I should follow the style
No, you can sit, you don't have to, but if you want to, please.
Okay, anyway, I sit. Because I have to carry my notes. I think when we talking about urbanization in China, always has a different view. Typically, people worry about our population, that we have so many people, 1.4 billion population. How can we have the urbanization like a developed country? That's one concern, job creation. Then also people will worry about the lifestyle of farmer. How can they move to the urban? Because they love the rural life. So even theoretically, we still have debate on China's urbanization. But of course, urbanization is a natural process of modernization, and also is a result of industrialization. None of the developed country has more than 10% of people living in rural area and also for agriculture. But how China's agriculture share of GDP already dropped to 10%. But we still have 50% of population living in the rural area. So it is a major problem of the income inequality. Actually, many of them come from this unequal or we call the delayed of urbanization. So that has become very important issue in China, how to speed up urbanization. But what's the problem in China, urbanization? We have something different, special, compared to any developed country. We have two special policies. One is the urban registration policy, we call hukou. That restricts a normal process of urbanization. Farmer, you come to a city, you can work, you find job, but you not get a normal process to purchase a house and the children go to school. So sometimes also restrict them to find job. So that is slow down the urbanization, especially slow down the whole family move to the city. The second policy is land ownership in rural area. It is public land ownership. You cannot sell, but you can use. So it's become, for the people in the rural area, it is very reluctant to give up this piece of land because this land is still hold them as the opportunity cost to move to the city. So the consequences of these two policies, China's urbanization, we have something good, but something bad. In terms of the good, the past urbanization is only the young people go to cities. So that really reduces the cost of industrialization or economic growth in the past years. They did not burden have the, like many other countries, urbanization, same time you carry the problem of the poverty in city, and also increase the social cost when all the people move to city. But China, we don't have such a problem. We only take care of the young group of the immigrants. So they only make much contribution for China's economic growth, but not carry out many social costs. But the problem of this policy is our family issue. This become maybe not economic issue, but it's a social issue. Many of those families being separate. The only young people live in work in the city, but the children and the parents still in the rural area. So from my point of view, this could be a long problem. For example, the children separated from parents for many years. We have 250 million the labor work in urban, but they have almost 80 million children. Only 20 million of those children is living with parents, but still have 60 million children who live behind. They still grow up with their grandparents. So that is the social issue. I think we have to pay attention. And also, the current system will slow down the modernization of the agriculture, because every family, went through urbanization, but the method of the production in rural areas still keep the same. Each family have a small piece of land, and not integrated, improve the efficiency of the agriculture. That's another problem of the current policy. So that's something we have to pay attention, because our urbanization is a little bit different from any developed country in the past. However, now I think from central government, especially Vice Premier Li Keqiang, in many speech now, he focus on urbanization in next 2 decades. When we talk about the engine of growth, in the past 30 years, the most important engine, or one of the most important engine of China's growth is export. But I will say in the next 2 decades, the engine of growth in China is urbanization. And also government already realized this importance. From top government and also from local government, now we are paying more attention to this issue. And I think the next 2 decades, all right, because according to currently we still have 50% of population in the rural area. At least 30% of them should migrate to urban area in next 2 decades. Mm-hmm. Currently, each year we have 20 million migration from rural. So according to this speed, either 20 years. So think about 20 years, we have almost 400 million population have changed their lifestyle from rural area to urban area. So what will be the demand for the infrastructure, for the construction, housing? So this will definitely push the internal demand. We talk about demand from China. I think the major demand is from urbanization. So because we talk about opportunity for the business, so that is China economic growth will not slow down at least the next 20 years. That's why I'm very optimistic talking about China's long-term economic growth. Past growth is we've already seen it, but what about the future? So I would say at least 20 years, urbanization will be the major engine of our China economic growth. Not only talk about the construction and also the durable consumption goods. When the people, their living standard or their lifestyle change from rural style to urban style, definitely the durable goods demand also increase, and also service sector. China's service sector is still underrepresented, still only 40% percentage, but I think this must be increased as urbanization increase. So what are the challenges for our urbanization? Well, one is reform of policy. Policy reform, in particular the land ownership reform, this is a big challenge. Not only economic issue, it's a political issue. So James Wen, professor, I think he's very specialized in how the land ownership change. This is, we debate, we discuss how practically how to reform this land. That is a challenge. Another challenge is job creation. How to increase the private sector for job creation. That's another challenge for China's urbanization in the next years.
Thank you, Professor Bergen. So it's an interesting parallel here. Urbanization is going to be the engine of growth for both China and India. For China, it's going to be a manifestation of the policy framework for boosting demand. In India, it's going to be the opposite, as we heard in the morning, in terms of ensuring the ability to supply, the ability to provide services and others. So that will be an interesting thing for us to get into. But let me turn now to Paul for his quick introduction, and then